Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Ingrid Coetzee and I am the session chair for our webinar today. This is the 23rd in our series, and this month we're actually celebrating also the theme around International Day for Biological Diversity, which is we're part of the solution. And we're going to be focusing today specifically on how cities and regions around the world have come up with solutions to global nature-related challenges. However, before we do that, I would just firstly like to welcome you all on behalf of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, as well as the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments. And then I would also just like to recognize the fact that we have many partners, and you can see their logos on the screen there. And also just to say that we want to recognize the very generous support of the EU Biodiversity Framework support, who has really helped us in bringing these webinars across the world throughout this long period, and will continue to do so still. So you can see here our webinar dates. We have some webinars coming up for the rest of the year. There are the dates. We have 2 webinars every month, and they are repeated in the morning, 10 a.m., which is UTC +2, and then 3 p.m., also UTC +2. And we do that so that we can cater for the different time zones. And normally what we do with our webinars is we record them. And with the fact that these webinars are recorded and that you have registered and joined the webinar, we hope that you agree to the fact that it will be recorded. And we do this so that we can share the webinar on our link, our YouTube link, and you'll see they are also available on the Subnational Advocacy for Nature website. The link is in the slide. And the other thing that I just want to mention briefly before we go across is that you will note that we ask also, if it's not so, that you please mute yourself, and we will, to save bandwidth, we ask that you just keep your videos off as well. We will hopefully have time at the end of our webinar for some question and answer time, and we ask that you make use of the chat box to please put your questions in. If you have a question that is directed to a specific speaker, just put the name in of the speaker there as well, and we will hopefully be able to deal with all of those at the end. And those of you that are regular participants of our webinars, you will know by now that we always send an email afterwards with our link to where we upload the recording as well as the presentations. And yes, just to say welcome again, everybody. And with this, I'm going to proceed and just go through the agenda very quickly today. We've gone through the welcome and introductions. I'm going to briefly after this just give a quick update of what's happening on the roadmap to COP15. And then I'm going to introduce our 4 speakers, and we're going to have presentations today from the city of Cape Town in South Africa, from Delhi. Hopefully we'll be able to connect with our speaker from Delhi, as well as Manchester, United Kingdom, and hopefully also from Tirana. And as I said, then afterwards we have some question and answer time. So if we look at where we are on the roadmap to COP15, we're just about 6 months to go to the end of the year. And less than that for COP. The Conference of Parties is scheduled to be held in the middle of October. The 7th Summit on Biodiversity for Cities and Subnational Governments is also going to be taking place. We know that this will be a virtual event, and we're still waiting to hear of the specific date. Hopefully it will be in that time period that the COP is being held as well. If not, we might have to hold it a little earlier, but we will hopefully be able to update you in the near future. Then some of the other big dates that are coming up is the launch of the Ecosystem Restoration Decade, which is going to take place in that first week of June to coincide with World Environment Day. And there's a very exciting program lineup for that week with plenary events and various other thematic events. So please keep the websites, both the Decade website as well as ICLEI's websites and the Subnational Advocacy for Nature websites. We will post updates on that as well. And then, of course, this week, and in fact, from this week right till the middle of June, we're in the CBD COP process, the technical meetings, the SAPSTA meeting, as well as the implementation meeting, the SBI meetings, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that just now. And then in August, the Open-Ended Working Group 3, the third meeting, which is the big negotiation meeting also, will be held in the first week of August. It seems that this is going to be hopefully an online, not an online, an in-person meeting, and I would presume possibly also with some online, sort of, in other words, a bit of a hybrid meeting. The final dates of that are not yet, and details are not yet known, and we will share that information as soon as we have that. And then, of course, there's the IUCN World Conservation Congress that everybody is looking forward to. And they've also come out with an announcement recently that it will be a hybrid event. So this is just really quickly just to give you an update on the latest sort of big events. It's really exciting to see that there are so many signatories now, more than 170. And in fact, this was about a week ago, and I'm sure those numbers are growing. It's probably a bit higher. I think it's around about 180 at the moment. And we really encourage those of you that are here from local or subnational governments, please, there is the link. I will ask one of my staff just to put the link also into the chat box. Please sign up and become part of this growing movement of subnational governments that are signing up to this amazing declaration. And then just, I just want to report also that there was a very, very successful International Biodiversity Forum event on the topic Living in Harmony with Nature that took place about 2 weeks, not quite 2 weeks ago. It was led by Congope, and it was an online event in Ecuador, but they had it also available in other languages. And there were some really amazing presentations from that as well. And we will, as soon as we have the link for the upload of those recordings, we will share that with our mailing list. And then just to mention that coming up in June, there is an online workshop that the Secretariat of the CBD is organizing. It's a very technical one, and it's really just for the experts. It's on financial sector and the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. They have issued a notification on this. There is information available on their website. It has very limited space, and they are looking for people that are experts in this field. So if you are interested, you can go and have a look at their website, and we will hopefully have a report back on this in one of our later webinars. And then also an exciting thing just to mention is that the action agenda for nature, people and nature, that the CBD is coordinating, has issued its first newsletter, and it's a really lovely newsletter. And it's on specifically biodiversity commitments. So have a look at that. There is the website link. It's a lovely one, and it has some amazing news about also what's happening in cities. And I'm hoping that from today's webinar, we will also be able to have some more information around that. And just to very briefly on that, say that ICLEI is working very closely with the Secretariat to get our commitment platform that we will be uploading onto Cities with Nature, hopefully in the near future. We're busy doing the software programming at the moment, and we're liaising closely with the Secretariat around how we can embed that in the action agenda as well and create links. And as you know, the Secretariat does recognize the Cities with Nature commitment platform as the place where cities and regions will make their commitments and share about their commitments, and also be able to track progress and to monitor and to report on their progress. So that's another exciting one. And then just quickly, as I said, we are in the midst of our SABSTA, the subsidiary body on science, technologies, and I can never remember what the other T is, as well as the subsidiary body on implementation. They're being held from this week right up to the middle of June. It consists of plenary sessions and contact groups. And just, you know, I mean, it's obviously a very, very full program, but I think the SABSTA items that local and subnational governments are most interested in, obviously there are many, but the most critical ones are the item 3, which is on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, item 9, which deals with the very topical issue of biodiversity and health, and then 10 on invasive alien species. And then on the implementation side, which is really a very important group, also looking at things like resource mobilization and financial mechanisms, capacity building, technology transfer, number 9, which is the mechanisms for reporting, assessment, and review of implementation. And that's where things like our commitment platform would come in. And then, of course, very, very important item 11, which we have reported on previously. It's around mainstreaming of biodiversity, as well as other strategic actions. And this is where the proposed decision text for engagement with local and subnational governments is being discussed. As well as the proposed plan of action, which is far more ambitious than the plan of action that came to an end at the end of last year. An important thing just to understand about the SABSTA and SPI meetings is that there will not be any L documents. These are limited documents. They are basically the sort of documents that get accepted once all the discussions around the actual wording has been agreed upon. So they're really a very important part of our negotiations. They are not going to be adopted at the SABSTA or SPI meetings, but will be deferred to a later time when there will be a physical meeting, which is an important thing to note. And then just to say also that the network of partners, so that's ICLEI, Regions for Sustainable Development, the Committee of Regions, the group of leading subnational governments towards the IT biodiversity targets, Government of Quebec, Advisory Committee on subnational governments, but also on cities, as well as the Scottish Government are participating actively in these plenary sessions and the contact groups. And to date, we've already made one joint statement around item 3 on the SABSTA meeting that was held on Monday and Tuesday. And that will be uploaded on the advocacy website, so you can go and see what is being said. And with that, I'm going to ask our speakers, those that are with us, to please put their videos on just so that you can see their faces. And I know that we have with us, our first speaker is going to be Lorraine Gerrand. She is the Head of Sustainable Partnerships and Financing in the Environmental Management Department at the City of Cape Town. And then hopefully we've been able to connect with our second speaker, who is Professor Babu. He lives in Delhi, and he's a Professor Emeritus. And he's from the Center of Environmental Management of Degraded Ecosystems at the University of Delhi. And then I know that we have Dave Barlow. Dave has been in one of our previous webinars, and it's great to welcome you again, Dave. Dave is Senior Policy Officer at Manchester City, and also the Council's Environment Planning and Infrastructure team. And he's obviously somebody that, as I said, we have had with us before. And then hopefully we've also been able to connect with Esmeralda Berry. She comes from the city of Tirana, and she's from the Directorate of Free Trade Zones, Foreign Investment and the Diaspora. So with this, I'm going to turn my screen off, and I am going to hand over to Lorraine. And Lorraine, are you ready? If you're just there, you are.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Good morning, panelists and participants. My presentation this morning will be around the City of Cape Town's Green Infrastructure Program. This program is a culmination of more than 25 years of work in Cape Town relating to the mapping of open space or the metropolitan open space system. The second big component of work that has preceded this particular initiative is the mapping of our biodiversity network in Cape Town, specifically using the categorizations and the targets from the COP, the Biodiversity COP, as well as national government in South Africa. And then the third preceding batches of work that happened in Cape Town was around environmental resource economics and understanding the ecosystem, goods and services, and the value of that to the economy and the residents of Cape Town. So that's just a little bit of background. I will focus today on the process of our new infrastructure mapping. This is an input into our spatial development frameworks in Cape Town. Now, at the moment, we are busy with district planning, but very soon we will also be reviewing our metropolitan spatial development framework. And the work that I'm presenting today is an attempt to mainstream biodiversity and green infrastructure ecological service provision in all aspects of the city's work, but very importantly in our spatial development frameworks. So let me delve into the presentation then. The purpose of our program is to map the green infrastructure of Cape Town. We are a city, a low-lying city. A majority of our city is very low-lying, with a number of river systems that start off in the mountainous areas outside of our city, some also inside our city, and then flows through a series of rivers and lowland wetland systems out into the ocean. So we have identified defined green infrastructure as a strategically planned, designed, and managed network of natural open spaces, as well as engineered ecological systems that provide ecological community and infrastructure services. So the importance for us here was to ensure that the ecological goods and services, as well as the economic and social services that our open space network provides, is adequately mapped, protected and enhanced through various planning and implementation frameworks in the city in order to underpin the sustainability of Cape Town, enhance our living environment and improve our resilience to the effects of climate change. Our Green Infrastructure Program has three components. There's a spatial component. There are toolkits consisting of guidelines and tools, and a program of implementation actions and projects. Due to time constraints today, I will be focusing on the spatial component and the toolkits, just also because the methodology that was used for the spatial component was quite new for our city, and we would like to share this with the participants here today, also to get input and feedback from you on similar projects that you may have done and methodologies that you may have used. Firstly, then, the infrastructure network mapping. We followed an interrogative district mapping approach. We divided the city into a grid, and then inside that grid followed a very iterative and consultative process with planners and environmental management officials at the ground level. So we went completely into a deep dive and through sitting around a table and consulting, looked at each piece of open space within the grid and mapped these spaces physically in a GIS environment. We focused on 3 sets of services: infrastructural services, ecological services, and social services. So for each site, there was an interrogation around these 3 categories to understand how does the site contribute to our green infrastructure, how does the site contribute to ecological functioning in our city, including biodiversity, and how does the site contribute to social services in our city. These are some of the questions that were asked for each site. So we asked questions around the contribution to the ecological functioning, the availability of indigenous species or vegetation that are still left on the site or can be enhanced, and then what social or economic uses the site has for immediate and the wider community of Cape Town. We then scored each site based on the questions and basically to get to a total GI score. I think important here is that it is not a prioritization because certain sites will have a far higher score on ecological, others will have a higher score on engineering services or the social contribution. So it is a combined score, but it is definitely not a prioritization. And these are how we are displaying, or how each space is displayed in the report. So we have an opportunity to see where the spaces are performing high or medium or low on the different questions and the scale that has been developed. So I'll take you briefly through through what it looks like on our GIS system in the city. What is very nice for us is that we have a corporate geographic information system viewer that is available to everyone within the city, and components of this also to external parties and residents and stakeholders. And what is amazing is that as we were sharing this information, we could put it onto this viewer, and our colleagues who are participating in the program could interrogate it at their offices, or at their screens, and provide feedback. So firstly, in terms of the total GI value, which I presented in the slide before, the high, medium, and low, for each site, it can be displayed visually in this way. And there you would see for each space has a number, and each space's GI value would then translate into a map physically on the ground like this. The next is the infrastructure value, also high, medium, and low. So we can see how much this particular site or group of sites in a corridor contributes to the infrastructure services that we receive from these sites. There's the ecological value. So in terms of based on what natural vegetation or ecological systems are still functioning on the site and in the network, we could then identify the ecological value. And the last one I want to show you is the social value. So in terms of, oh yes, and then we also added the social potential. These are the attributes that you can see in the system. We then also used, we're also working with the CSIR, which is a scientific organization in South Africa, to develop a model for this, for us to be able to go forward with this, with a very scientifically minded approach, and to ensure that this approach is credible and defensible and can be replicated in future iterations. These are some of the land categorizations that have been used or developed by the CSIR for our use going forward. And we continue to refine this with the CSIR as we go forward. I'm going to then quickly touch on the toolkit. As part of this program, we also are developing a toolkit of mechanisms that makes it easier to mainstream green infrastructure and biodiversity in our city. At the moment, we are focusing on two aspects, the sort of prescriptive or regulatory aspects, which is regulations, and in South Africa, we call them bylaws. And here we have a concept note for a green infrastructure bylaw, and we are working at the moment to review all the cities' existing, or many of the cities' existing policies and bylaws to mainstream or embed the green infrastructure network. And then the informative guidelines are best practice guidelines. In the four that we are prioritizing is trees. That one is already available. We can share the link to that. The next one is water courses. That one is in process. And then the two that will follow those are urban green and stormwater drainage and management. I will stop here. My colleague, Joanne Jackson, who is the project manager for this program, is also on the call. And any inquiries can either be sent to me or to Joanne if you would like additional information on this particular program in the city of Cape Town. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lorraine. That was really interesting. And I would encourage anybody, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box. I think we won't have time, but hopefully Lorraine can respond to you there. I'm going to introduce our next speaker now, Professor Babu, who also will do a presentation. And I just want to make sure, Professor, are you going to show some slides? If you can switch your video on and unmute yourself, please.
Right. Slides. Slides by.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I speak on biodiversity parks of Delhi as global models for urban environmental sustainability and resilience. As all of you are aware, that natural heritage, that is living organisms and their habitats, is wiped out from the urban developmental matrix, particularly in Delhi, due to urbanization. This resulted in unsustainable urban environment, leading to drastic reduction in the quality of life. The challenge is how to provide environmental sustainability that ensures the quality of life. The answer is to bring back or recreate the lost natural heritage in the urban matrix. This is precisely what we did in Delhi. The concept of biodiversity park was evolved and implemented for the first time in Delhi in the world as a part of blue-green infrastructure of Delhi to what you call enhance the quality of life. What are biodiversity parks? Biodiversity parks are unique landscapes of wilderness where ecological assemblages of native species are created in the form of biological communities over few hundred hectares of marginal or degraded landscapes. And in other words, the biodiversity parks harbor natural heritage and become nature reserves of the area, and also have educational, cultural, and conservation values, and render a wide range of ecological services besides providing environmental sustainability. Delhi Development Authority, a local government city building agency, in joint collaboration with the Center for Environmental Management of Degadi Ecosystems, University of Delhi, has developed 7 biodiversity parks in Delhi. These include Yamuna, Aravali, Nilahas, Tilpat Valley, Tughlakabad, Kamala Nehru Ridge, and Kalandi biodiversity parks. These biodiversity parks spread over an area of 300 acres and include a wide range of landscapes and riverscapes, particularly the riverscape, the wetlands and floodplains. These biodiversity parks harbor more than 3,000 plant and animal species, thriving in 100 biological communities and rendering a wide range of ecological services worth of several millions of rupees annually. Some of the services rendered by these biodiversity parks include what we call providing health care in terms of enriching the human microbiome, filtration of air pollutants both from point and non-point source pollution, storage of flood water, recharging groundwater, buffering local temperature, providing other community services, besides serving as a hub for promoting nature conservation and environmental education among students. The biodiversity parks have become a global models for environmental sustainability and resilience in urban centers for replication elsewhere. Realizing the role of biodiversity parks in environmental sustainability and rejuvenation of rivers, the judiciary in India ordered to establish biodiversity parks all along the rivers in India, as well as in the state capitals and district headquarters. Guidelines for setting up of biodiversity parks along floodplains of rivers has already been notified by Central Pollution Control Board, Government of India. An e-book on biodiversity parks, Nature Reserves of Delhi, is already available on the open net, which is free of cost. I now take you through quickly the Yamuna and Aravali biodiversity parks of Delhi, and also video clips showing the treatment of sewage water by constructed wetland system at Nilahas Biodiversity Park, where a dead lake is brought back to its pristine glory. This is the scenario before we started restoring these salt-affected soils in the upstream of the Wazirabad reservoir along the river Yamuna. What I want to say is the Yamuna Biodiversity Park spreads over an area of 457 acres and include both active as well as inactive floodplains. And phase 1 is developed on the inactive floodplain, which never receives floods, whereas in the phase 2 we have every year floods occur and a large amount of flood water is stored in some of the wetlands. Now, this is the site after 18 years representing different ecosystems that are present all along the river Yamuna. I must make it very clear to you. These ecosystems are recreated on an area which I've shown you mostly composed of what we call sodic soils. It took about 2 years to bring the soil suitable for plant growth and development, and subsequently we brought all the native species which are characteristic of the river Yamuna basin, assembled ecologically and developed these diverse ecosystems that are found in the river Yamuna basin. Next, please. This is we have the Yamuna Biodiversity Park has 2 zones, the visitor zone and the nature conservation zone. This is a mixed deciduous forest ecosystem that is widely distributed along the floodplains of river Yamuna, is recreated over about 100 acres in the Yamuna Biodiversity Park phase 1. Next, please. Now, this is a silted wetland. We desilted it, and within 2 years, we brought a functional wetland ecosystem which receives thousands of migratory birds every year. Next, please. Now, this is a wetland which has been restored in the active floodplain of Biospheric Park Phase 2. It spreads over an area of 100 acres, and it stores 500 million gallons of flood water every year. It has a mosaic of wetlands, grasslands, and floodplain forest. And once we develop the what you call plant communities, a large number of animal species arrive on their own along the corridor of the river Yamuna from the neighboring what you call national parks. Now we have just go back. We have the wild boars, which were seen in Delhi about 200 years ago. Now we brought them back, and we have a large population of small Indian civet cat and jungle cat and Indian hare. And interestingly, our Yamuna Biospheric Park also received top carnivores like leopard, and then we have what you call hog deer, and we expect carnivores in large numbers in phase 2 very soon, as already the habitat is ready to receive such higher carnivores. Next, please. Now, this is the what you call original site of Aravalli Biospheric Park. It was predominantly composed of Prosopis juliflora, and mostly represented by 150-year-old Moram mined out sites. Now, such site has been developed into what you call a luxuriant tropical moist deciduous forest characteristic of Aravallis, and we also developed other kinds of forest ecosystems that are characteristic to Aravallis. For example, next please. All right, we have seen these birds about 100 years ago, 50 to 100 years ago at Delhi, but now these birds have come and made Aravalli Biospheric Park as their home. And there's some of these what you call mammal species that are found in the Aravalli Biospheric Park. The Aravalli Biospheric Park spreads over an area of about 700 acres near Vasant Vihar, Maipalpur, and Vasant Kunj area, and it represents the what you call it represents the last spur of the Aravallis. These are some of the mammals that are found in the Aravalli Biospheric Park. Now I'll take you how we treat this raw sewage. Is 1 mld of raw sewage comes from a drain which actually carries both rainwater as well as the sewage, and these are my oxidation ponds, and this is my gravitation channel, and then we have the filtration zone, and you can see the filtration zone is, and this is my constructed wetland with 25 aquatic species. And using this, we treat 1 mld of raw sewage into a clean water within 24 hours with a zero energy. And the quality of the water is more or less similar or better than the what you call the river water. You can see the clean water that is going from the constructed wetland, and you can see the dead lake has been restored back to its pristine glory. This lake used to provide drinking water to part of Delhi long ago, and it was dead because of urbanization. But now we brought back this lake. This is all what I want to say, but I I wish that whenever you happen to visit Delhi, you are most welcome to these biodiversity parks. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer.
Thank you so much, Professor. And I would love to visit Delhi again. I've seen some of those parks, but not all. That was really amazing. And I'm going to hand over to our next web speaker now, Dave Barlow from Manchester. Before I do that, I just want to mention that we may run over time a little bit, but please, we'd like to give our speakers a proper opportunity. Dave, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm sharing now, hopefully. Can everybody see that?
It's starting, yeah, thank you.
Great stuff, thanks very much. Thanks so much for having us, everybody. It's really exciting to be part of a growing network and a movement, as Ingrid has said. So I'm just here to give you a bit of an insight into what we're doing in Manchester. Manchester is a deeply urban city in the northwest of England in the UK. It's very much a driver of the Industrial Revolution. So we have got like a post-industrial landscape, and it's very much a linear strip of around 45 square miles. That's about 115 square kilometres. So quite a small, densely populated area. The population at the moment is about 550,000 people. But in the wider conurbation of Greater Manchester, that's probably goes up to about 3 million people. So very, very much sort of like a deeply urban landscape. About 50% of our city is covered in greenery or is non-permeable. And very much the agenda is growing all the time in relation to how we can actually smartly and creatively deploy nature-based solutions within a city environment. Let's just make sure I can scroll down. Oh, it's not moving to my next slide. Can everybody see my next slide? Oop.
Not yet. Do you want to just move your, sometimes it just helps to press your cursor down at the bottom.
Yeah, I am.
Or on the screen, you can also, you should be able to.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, hello. It's taking its time. Sorry about that. Yes, so there is a political commitment, a growing political commitment around the climate change agenda. So although Manchester had declared a climate emergency in 2020, we did already have an established green infrastructure plan and strategy. And eerily, it very much mirrored some of the work that Lorraine had highlighted from South Africa early on about having an overarching strategy, having an action plan, having a technical report to steer some of those priorities within the city. So there is an energy to make things happen. And certainly we've got a number of different focus areas that we're working on. But one of the important things for us is to have this strong, nested policy hierarchy. Now, that sounds a bit dry, but I like it. If you think of policies and strategies without getting all jingoistic, as the flags that were carried into battle in days of old, it's very important, I think, to be able to rally to something, to have a clear sense of direction, to understand where we're going. And I think I would say this, wouldn't it? I'm a policy officer, but I think it's very important to have a vision that we're working towards. So I see myself very much more of a standard bearer than a policy officer, if you will. But what we've got is we've got this green infrastructure strategy within this nested policy hierarchy. So the Our Manchester piece of work at the top is our long-term community vision for the whole of the city of Manchester. And we've got a local development plan and a climate change action plan that supports that. So all our activity within our green infrastructure strategy feeds into realising some of these objectives. And below the strategy, you've got more focused pieces of work. I'll talk a little bit more about biodiversity in detail later, but we've also got a strong park strategy and a tree and woodland action plan. So the thing about our green and blue strategy was not necessarily about having lots more green infrastructure. but very much about making the most out of what we already have. And I think that was a really important light bulb moment for us, that actually recognizing that we could do more with what we had was really important. So one of our key objectives is about improving the quality and function of the city's landscape. Not necessarily about having lots more, but our parks and green and blue infrastructure that we already have, how do we improve what we have already? So that was a real light bulb moment for us. And one of the other important things was about, can everybody see that, the title of that, Turning Policy into Practical Action? It's very much about working with citizens to actually co-develop responses to these policies. And it was not just about taking advantage of opportunities, but looking at what the real needs and wants of a community are, and then where the suitability and opportunity came in for particular nature-based solutions and interventions. So it's a much smarter, more nuanced response is what we wanted.
Dave,
Yes.
I think your slides are not moving on. Maybe just take it out of presentation mode.
All right, okay. Are yours not moving? They're moving on mine.
I think it's not pulling through. I have asked our technical staff to see what they can do.
I am sorry.
No, not a problem. These things happen sometimes.
Dave, I've got a copy of your PowerPoint, so I'm happy to share, and you can tell me when I should go to the next slide.
Okay, if you can do that, that would be great.
Yeah, let's rather do that. Thanks, Tamlin.
Sorry about this.
So which slide do you want us to
keep moving. Next one. This one. If we stay there. Basically, it's about turning some of those policies into practical action. So it's a nuanced, needs-based approach. So looking at exactly what your assets are within the city and how we can make the most of them. So it's very much looking at what the needs and wants are of a community, combined with what the opportunities are, but also the suitability of a particular intervention. So what is it that we could actually benefit from in that area? Is it about more trees? Is it about swales and watercourses, wetlands, grasslands? So what is it that we need? If we can move on to the next slide, please. And what we've undertaken, I don't expect you to look at the detail of this slide, because I will send you a link to 2 pieces of work that this relates to. We have an overarching green infrastructure strategy, as we talked about, but underpinning that is this natural capital review, and it's called the Nature of Manchester. And what it does is visualize exactly what we're trying to do on the ground within the city. So it gives us a very accessible, easy way of assessing where our neighbourhoods are. So this is the linear strip of Manchester that I was talking about. And then we've broken that down into 32 neighbourhoods and looked at the component parts within that. So all those different colours on that graph relate to things like trees and woodlands, garden space, watercourse, parkland, amenity ground, brownfield land. So it breaks it down. And what you can see, those 2 tiny little columns at the bottom there, they relate to the city centre of Manchester. Really challenging area. All of us, I'm sure, will have challenges with city centres. Next slide, please. And what we're able to do, looking at this data in a clever way, very much again like Lorraine had said, was look at what are the thematic drivers. So we've got this baseline of what our green infrastructure is made up of, but what are the other thematic drivers? And we've identified a list of 12 thematic drivers, including things like air quality, access to green and blue spaces, biodiversity, flood risk, different types of flood risk, fluvial and pluvial flood risk. And then we've created a scoring system, again, spookily, very much like Lorraine was mentioning earlier on. Next slide, please. And what that assessment allows us to do is visualize it. We've created what we're calling a benefits wheel, and we can provide area-based comparisons. So again, you don't need to see the detail. I can send you a link to the report later, but those 12 segments within the wheel relate to a particular ecosystem service. So what you can see is where there's white on that wheel, that represents an opportunity. And as we said, it's not necessarily about having a priority as such, but it certainly helps us to start the conversation with citizens and with landowners to make this happen. So yeah, I'll move on quickly now. Next slide. And looking at where this data leads us to is, again, focusing on particular areas. So we're focusing on trees, on biodiversity, and also on our watercourses. And we've got a detailed asset appraisal of our treescape. And again, where you can see red dots on that map indicate where there is a deficiency in street tree cover. So it gives us a start to work with local communities to say, could we get more trees in these areas? Next slide, please. And then politically, this has been picked up, and they really like this idea of prioritised investment. And they have come up with, we've got a Managing Manchester's Trees programme that's just about to be finalised, and it's backed up by £1 million tree planting programme over the next 2 years. Next slide, please. And then we're focusing, one of the other thematic drivers is around biodiversity. Now, we're having a new take on how we assess the city's biodiversity resource, and we're working very much in partnership with experts within the field. We've done some really detailed evaluation, and again, the blue dots relate to links and key reports that provide us with some citizen science and citizen evidence as around the importance of biodiversity for local communities, especially during COVID. It's just been incredibly useful to actually have this assessment, to engage with citizens around urban nature. Next slide, please. And we've got loads of different creative ways of involving people around nature in the city. And I think that's really exciting. We're developing flagship species and habitats that are working with communications officers to get the message out there that nature within the City of Manchester is incredibly valuable. Next slide, please. I did mention as well, similar to Lorraine, that we're having a focus on watercourses, and we've got a project called Our Rivers, Our City, which is looking at the concept of permeability and sponge city within Manchester. So again, I can send you some more details about that, but that's a river valley based approach. Next slide, please. And then international partnerships to bring these concepts to life. One of our projects is a Horizon 2020 project looking at permeability, which is called Grow Green. And that's looking at how we can increase the permeability or sponginess of neighbourhoods to combat the effects of climate change. Next slide, please. Coming to the end now, Ingrid. But we're not doing this from a standing start. We have been doing this for a long while. This early shot on the top left is a river valley in Manchester in the late 1970s, a pulverised fuel ash tip and contaminated landscape. And this is how it is today as a local nature reserve and world-class mountain biking course. Next slide, please. Just coming up to the final two slides now. And just to say that, you know, I would say this, wouldn't I? But strategies and plans are really important because it helps provide the mandate to make things happen. And I'll just read one statement there. Without a clear policy and strategy for green infrastructure, our projects and other funding bids currently in development just wouldn't have been possible. So if in doubt, get yourself a plan. Thanks very much. And I think that's me. Last slide is the same one.
Thank you so much. And it's just been incredible for me to see how from the 3 cities that we've heard of already, there's so much that's happening and many things very similar, but also very different solutions and approaches. And we welcome now our last speaker, Esmeralda Berry from the city of Tirana. If you want to just take your mute off, and then are you going to share some screen slides?
Yes, we are.
Thank you so much, Esmeralda. Over to you. And
thank you very much.
We will finish
Thank you very much, everyone, for the patience and also for the amazing presentations, because honestly, I know how much effort and detail has been put into them. So I hope you can hear me as clearly as possible. I'm going to start with my own presentation. Let's see. Can everyone see the presentation?
Not yet.
Yet, and give it a few seconds.
So are you using the share screen?
Yes, but just wait, I'm gonna disconnect because I have two screens and I think Zoom is...
That's what confuses it, yeah.
Yeah, the Zoom does not allow for two screens, so just a second.
So while we're waiting for... Oh, there you are. Thanks. Okay, you're back. Great.
Okay. Should appear any minute.
Okay, I'll let you know. Nothing yet.
Okay.
There you are. It's coming now. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Just privacy issues as always. So I hope now it's full screen.
Not yet, but I think let's carry on. It seems to be slow. It just says it started sharing screen. Can you move it forward?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna start by introducing everyone a little bit to Tirana. We are a quite small city in the Western Balkans, but we do have 1 million population by now. I'm currently working as the Director of Foreign Investments and Free Trade Zones and Diaspora in the city of Tirana, but I've covered also a lot about the master plans of the city and the development. Tirana, I want to say something very shortly about the story because definitely the topics you mentioned were a lot related of nature-based challenges and how we have used that to recover or to test our resilience as a city. So basically, Tirana in 2010 became 100 years young, we like to call it, but it was 100 years anniversary. And right before our 100 years, we experienced a deadly earthquake on 26 November, which was quite detrimental and had a lot of destruction of thousands of buildings and loss of life, unfortunately. And after that, we got hit by the pandemic. So you can imagine all the stressful and emergency situations that the city of Tirana went through during the time. I want to talk a bit about the location of Albania and Tirana, the influences as one of the countries that is between the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc. And this is a map of Tirana of 1921. So you can see that the map gives a little bit of scale, and there used to be around 17,000 people living in Tirana during that time. And in the maps from space, you can easily see how the urban area increases in density and how the city is looking now. So basically, the city in 25 years, it quadrupled and went to 800,000 citizens. We have estimated that we have a lot of unregistered citizens as well due to the ones coming from other cities. And an estimation of 1 million population is for the city. What have we done about it? I love that the previous speaker said that how we put these strategic solutions into practical use and how we make them real to and touchable for citizens. With the help of EBRD, we became part of Green Cities framework. And with Green Cities, we got a lot of help to put a Green City action plan for Tirana. But what is an action plan for a city? An action plan is some tangible goals in the short run. So you always have the master plans and the long-term strategies, but what kind of short goals did the city have to achieve within 3 to 5 years in order to ensure that in 2030, it would achieve its own master plan objective goals?
Esmeralda, sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting some people saying that they can't see the slides and mine doesn't seem to move on.
Okay,
So check.
This is actually internet kind of thing, so it can be even mine or theirs. Both things are possible. Let me. Yeah. Can you see my slides moving?
No.
No. This is great news.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry. It's always, we've been doing this for a long time now, and it's always the case with.
It's still very interesting, Esmeralda. I'd just keep on talking.
Yeah.
I have no idea how beautiful pictures do I have. Like.
I know, that's why we'd like to see them. But look, if you can't sort it out quickly, we will share the slides with everybody afterwards. So.
All right. That's also good news. So basically what we have done is we've done 2 plans. One of the plans is the master plan, which we have 13 strategic objectives. And the other one is the Green City Action Plan, which is short-term goals we have to achieve. If you're not seeing my maps and my beautiful pictures, I'll try to be as explicit as possible. Basically, Tirana 2030 is our city in 2030. So what we'd like to have achieved by then. And with the help of a famous Italian architect, we designed the Tirana Orbital Forest. What is the Orbital Forest? I don't know if you've heard about Stefano Boeri, but he is the architect behind the Vertical Forest. Vertical Forest is this beautiful building in the center of Milan, which has been very famous among architects. And he designed also a forest for us. And this was kind of a nature-based solution. We used one to curb urban sprawl, so cities would not just enlarge without any nature-stopped way. And this helped a lot to kind of keep the buildings within a specific area and avoiding them to expand beyond the orbital forest. The orbital forest assigned for us a task that we should plant around 2 million trees by 2030. And we started on making average goals, let's say yearly goals, to plant these trees. Due to being a developing city, it's not very easy to tell people that we're going to spend our budget on sustainable solutions when we have so many more problems that need to be solved in the meantime. So this was a lot of campaigning and mostly donations. So we started this sort of a cool trend that you donate a tree, which made people and citizens very involved in the process. And, you know, everyone will take more of something if it's theirs, and even if it's a tree or a bench in the city and so forth. So we started a trend that famous people were involved in planting trees for their engagements, their birthdays, and we achieved to plant yearly around 100,000 trees, which helped us a lot to achieve the goal every year. And 70% of all the planting was total donations from for trees for a birthday, for a grandparent, and so forth. So our master plan was definitely about nature. We were trying to find a balance between the city and nature and sort of create blue and green corridors among the city. I'll go on with some of the main plans.
We can see now, thanks.
Oh, this is good. Can you see them switching or you just see one?
Switching, and they're beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. This is such good news. So this is what we call the Metro Bosco or the orbital forest. And the orbital forest is supposed to have 13 projects within it. And these projects are supposed to enable us to have a sustainable development, not just, you know, urban sprawl buildings as if they were the only ones that mattered in the city. And we have a saying as well about budgeting, like if most people don't use cars, then budget for most people. Basically, we kind of reconsidered the budget by participation in order to give more space to pedestrians, to children, to walkers of the city, and also to areas that were with no cars. I'll start with a few pictures where you can see how certain areas were designed to kind of add greenery and biodiversity to the space. This is one of our planting seasons because they start in November and April is the latest where you can plant, so the trees will actually take ground. And these, of course, these were before COVID. And so the gatherings and season of planting, we managed to plant 300,000 trees in 24 months, which was a very hard target to get. And then we were using also the educational part, so involving children and the new generation, because the trees would be there for them, not for us probably. And so they had to need to learn how to take care for their trees and their gardens and their greenery. And this was a campaign which became such a great trend in the city that it was very hard to manage. Of course, everyone wanted the mayor to be part of the planting, but we managed as many gatherings as possible. Another one of the objective goals that we set for ourselves and we put into place was the creation of pedestrian areas. So here you can see the Skanderbeg Square is the main square in the city of Tirana and was recently renovated, and it actually won the best public space in 2018 in Europe, because it is 4,000 square meters of pedestrian area that used to be the biggest roundabout for cars in the Balkans. This is in the 90s, a picture of the main square before cars started and exponentially grew. And this is what it used to look like just before the renovation. So this whole area used to be a roundabout to distribute cars in the city and sort of the small ring of the city. And this is what it turned today. So the whole area and the whole ring became much bigger and kind of allowed for the main center to be a complete pedestrian area with increased biodiversity and little pocket parks around it. This not only allowed for, you know, nature and people to walk and to survive, but it also allowed for multiple, let's say, events and activities that could increase the city healthy lifestyle. Definitely before COVID. And these are some of the spatial views of the forest that started flourishing in the 2 years to pass. What does this mean? It's for those who work with the city, they know that it's about placemaking. And placemaking is a terminology that we use when you get this area in the city that is quite useless in terms of frequency of people who try to, you know, use it there, and we turn it into a place that is regenerated and revitalized and full of life. So these are some multiple views of the pedestrian areas. Another thing that I'd like to talk is also about what COVID showed us is that sometimes we needed to turn to nature because no other space was safe, buildings or theaters and so forth. Luckily, the Green City Action Plan also involved turning public spaces into use. So we worked a lot to put budget in spaces that were like this. This is an old amphitheater in the middle of the park. And it actually was designed by the first female architects in Albania. but left out of use and out of order. And from this, we turned it into this. I hope you can still see the pictures.
Yes, we can.
Which is an open space theater in the middle of the park that was actually one of the only places that allowed for cultural and social events to still take place in Tirana the months after lockdown. Another public space that we'd like to consider is the New Bazaar. So the New Bazaar is also an old space that was left forgotten before. Was one of the oldest spaces in the city that used to be a trading place for citizens. And slowly it became a fish market, but it was left deteriorated in the most neighborhoods. So our intervention in placemaking, which is still getting a place that is definitely out of use, renovating it and turning into a lifestyle for citizens. So these are some of the before and after pictures of how placemaking changes a specific area. One of the other great projects that we use is I'm talking about special planning for everyone that is not in the area of expertise. And spatial planning also includes extending the city. So basically, we started extending the boulevard of the city, which serves as a backbone. And this kind of gave the opportunity to direct development in a specific area. My last topic, so that I don't get too much time from you guys, is about children and child-friendly cities. So in order to increase social commitment to the city and lifestyle and mental health, especially for the year we left, areas for children were very important because at the beginning of our mandate 6 years ago, we noticed that the city you could not see children around. Either they were in closed kindergartens, either they were in schools and private playgrounds, but it was visible that we had not one existing playground that was, updated a bit and easy for children to use. So one of our main missions was that each month we created a new playground within the theme of pocket parks. So these pocket parks around the city would serve as acupuncture, a small park, a small children playground where also grandparents and neighborhoods could live and have a nice afternoon. This created a lot of noise within the city, positive noise. And I'm going to show some of the type of playgrounds that we integrated within the nature and within neighborhoods. These are some pictures that you can see before and after, and how we found this, I want to call them lazy areas, and how we turned them into community-friendly areas. So this was play before and play after. Definitely nature played a huge role in it because it made them more safe, more inviting, and more friendly. This is a map around the city, so you can see all the playgrounds that we injected in different neighborhoods in order to create a more social community within the city. And within 48 months, this was one of the hardest goals to achieve. Another topic that is definitely relevant to mobility is the bike lanes. So Tirana used to have 0 bike lanes because here it's either very, very rainy or very, very hot in the summer. But we tried to adapt it and start with a minimum grid. A minimum grid is supposed to have around 47 kilometers of bike lanes within the city that gave people the ability to travel with bike or walking within 5 kilometers around their neighborhood. So besides the change in the roads, it was very necessary to make a mental change, a cultural change in the mindset of people, because after the communism in Tirana, the cars were more of a status than a necessity. And we started making this cultural and mindset campaigns to change that, even for children, by starting learning them biking and safety rules within the city. So at least we'd see a switch in slower motion. It's definitely very difficult to change behaviors. Every time in a city, when people are asked if they want change, everyone says yes. When they're asked if they want to start with themselves, everyone hesitates. So these are the cutest pictures that you probably will see today. And to close up, one of the other things that I would love to see and to talk about was, again, with my previous speaker talking about how making small changes increase the efficiency and usage of the city. So these playful lines helped us make people respect more, especially roads near schools. And before and after COVID, one of the, you can see in this picture that how we doubled the area of pedestrian sidewalks. And we started using this frame that we don't call them sidewalks anymore, we call them main walks, in order to give more space to people who are walking, which was also a necessity during that time. I'm not going to go into further detail because I would not like to be out of time. But thank you very much for listening. It is definitely a bit awkward when you're listening, when you're talking and no one is, giving feedback. So I hope I didn't bore you guys. No. And please let us know or ask me any questions you might have in the meantime.
Thank you so much, Esmeralda. And in fact, to all of the speakers, this has been absolutely incredible. It's been so inspiring. And it really makes me very proud to be able to see how work that's being done in cities, the small ones, the small steps, but I actually think if we put them all together, they're really big steps. And for me, what is so gratifying is to see how these solutions that you've come up with in the 4 cities that we've had today, all very different, but all equally inspiring in different ways, are really contributing to this sort of this feeling of hope and solidarity, and the showing how by working together in our various parts of the world, we can build a better future for everybody, and we can build a future that's living in harmony with nature. And one of the things that the SCBD has said with this theme of we're part of the solution is that they particularly also want to focus on the idea of hope and positiveness and sort of solidarity. And they're driving this initiative called Wave of Solidarity. And it's our wish that many of these initiatives that we've heard about this morning, that they will be submitted to the CBD as part of the Wave of Solidarity. So this has really been an incredible session. I've certainly enjoyed it very much. I apologize again, firstly to our speakers, but also our participants for the technical glitches. That's unfortunately one of the things that we are having to live with as a result of COVID and the virtual reality that we live in now. No matter how good we get at these Zoom and other platform meetings, there are always technical glitches. And the hard thing is that you can't quickly just say to the tech person, quickly go up to the stage and fix the presentation or whatever. We're very much alone in our little rooms. And that's why it's so amazing to see. And I love the point that you made, Esmeralda, about turning to nature because no other space is safe. I think that was just a lovely one. So this has been a really great webinar. I'm sorry we had to go over the time, but I also want to thank both the participants and our speakers for your patience with our technical glitches today, and also for going over time. I certainly think it's been very worthwhile. If there are questions, please, you are able to email us. You've got the links and the email addresses. We will try and resolve them by forwarding them to our speakers. And as I said earlier, we will definitely, once we've finished the webinar and we've had time, we do upload it onto our website. And then we will also share the presentations with everybody that has registered. And thanks again for these amazing presentations from all of you. Have a good day, keep safe, and enjoy nature. Bye-bye.